Welcome to the Thursday edition of the St. Mark's Spark. I'm glad that you can join us at this time. So, we're going to go into Matthew chapter 18, verses 10 through 20. We're again continuing on our reading through Matthew and thought we'll just get right after it. Jesus is speaking here and he says, "Take care that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you, in heaven, their angels continually see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a shepherd has 100 sheep, and if one of them goes astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones should be lost. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point it out. Point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of two or more witnesses. But if the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses even to listen to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, I am there among them." May this God's word speak to our hearts, our minds, our spirits. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So Jesus starts off here where we left off yesterday, which was about little ones and about children, about having the faith like children, the trust like children, but also recognizing that children are the most vulnerable. And maybe it's about being vulnerable like children. And we have to look out for one another. We have to take care of one another. We literally belong to one another. This is what this passage is about. And then Jesus gives an illustration here. It says a shepherd has 100 sheep, and the 100 sheep are doing fine, but one of those sheep wanders off. One of those sheep go astray. Will the good shepherd not leave the 99 who are safe and go hunting, go searching for the one who has gone astray, so he might find it, he might save it, might rescue it, might bring it back? Jesus says even more than that, he is going to rejoice even more with the one who has been saved than with the 99 who did not need to be saved. Now, I've heard this scripture passage actually quoted quite a bit in the last week, and it's interesting that it's our daily lectionary passage today, because this is an illustration of when people talk about responding to Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter. This is the theological and biblical evidence to say, well, we have to start with the ones who are hurting. We have to start with the ones who are in danger. We have to start with the ones who are in trouble. Because we can say all the time, we can say all lives matter, but it doesn't matter until Black Lives Matter, until there's an intentionality with those folks who are not safe and are not protected. I had an interesting experience with Sadie and Sam on Sunday. We went to the Black Lives Matter march from Parkway West High School to Parkway West Middle School. There were a lot of people there. Social distancing was in place. Were people wearing masks. The sound system wasn't that great, but the parts that we could hear of the speakers was very, very encouraging to hear from young people and to hear them share what they see is their reality at school, what they see their reality is in the culture that is around them, and many things that they are sharing are things that are going on if we see it or if we don't. The fact of the matter is, if we ignore it, doesn't mean that it stops being something that people are dealing with. And so there were several speakers, and then we went to the march and to the walk down Clayton. And as we walked down Clayton, something we saw, and there's just one or two individuals that I could see. There was one person who was just purposely there just to taunt the protesters, just to rile people up. and that was disturbing on a number of different levels for me, because this is a peaceful protest. This is a peaceful march. This is clearly guaranteed in the First Amendment about the right, the freedom to speak, and the freedom to congregate. And the person who was just trying to disrupt it and bringing a bullhorn and playing music and trying to distract and not be able to hear what these young people were saying, but also the fact that as we were walking, he would just shout out at people, "All lives matter." And it was interesting and it was eye-opening for me to be in the middle of this march, in the middle of this walk, this peaceful protest, and to have somebody taunt folks peacefully marching with the phrase "all lives matter," because there was no joy in this individual's heart. There was no kindness in his individual heart. There was no idea that this person was someone who was really concerned or cared about all lives, because he was verbally berating people who were marching peacefully. And so I started to have a brief glimpse into this, and by no means is it exhaustive. By no means is my experience even a small fraction of what other people experience. But I did get to see, for those who are marching peacefully and to lift up Black Lives Matter, and to be taunted with the phrase, they were marching peacefully for Black Lives Matter, and to be taunted with the phrase "all lives matter," it's shown a new light on that. And so I want just to encourage you to be very careful about the language that we use, because I do believe in my heart that language is about the most powerful thing that we have. And to say all lives matter is one thing, but we can't commit to that until we actively are working for brown and for black brothers and sisters. We can't claim that unless we're looking out. And this is the biblical warrant that Jesus talks about in the passage today, where he says, if 99 people are sheep are doing well, but one person or one sheep is hurting or is lost or has gone astray, the good shepherd's going to go after that sheep, because that sheep's life matters. That person's life matters. That group of people, their lives matter. And so, of course, all the sheep matter, but in the dangerous times, it is the ones who are in danger that God is going after, and tells us that we have to pay attention to as well. The rest of this conversation is dealing with how you're supposed to interact with people within your own faith community, within your own church. And says, if someone sins against you, don't just ignore it. Talk to them, but don't talk to them in public. Talk to them in private, and hopefully you can share how you have been offended, how you have been hurt, and hopefully there is an apology, there's a confession, there's a change of heart and some level of transformation. But if that doesn't work, well, then get 2 or 3 other people from the church and bring them and let them share what they have seen, what they have witnessed. And if they turn back and they confess, and that's great too. But if that doesn't work, then bring them to the church. And if they don't listen to the church, then you cut them off. Now we might think, well, this is pretty hard, they're cutting someone off, but in fact this is the opposite of it, of saying that when there is disagreements, you talk about it, you converse about it, you are in dialogue about it, you are honest with how someone else has hurt you, or maybe, and probably in many cases, maybe honest with yourself about how you have hurt other people by the things you have done or the things you have left undone. I have to do that as well as a pastor, of recognizing, looking at things maybe in high school or college, of jokes that I had told that weren't kind, or of rumors I spread that caused harm to other people, or times where I was not patient with somebody who was going through suffering, or the times where I have minimized the pain of individuals in just because I sat in a place of comfort. And so this is a difficult thing. This is a challenging thing. And yet this is what we are called to do, and this is what we are called to be. So when we look out at the world, it is important to do so with a biblical perspective. It's important to go out, as we're talking about coming up this week, the birth of Christ, in our sermon series and going through the story. We're at the birth narratives, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, and a lot more on Sunday as well. But we say that it's one thing to see Christ. It's one thing to hear what Christ is doing. It's something else entirely to follow. and to participate in God's kingdom building work. And that kingdom building work does not happen just in heaven or just in the by and by, the pie in the sky. That kingdom building work happens on earth here today. And it starts with paying attention to those who are hurting. That's what Jesus did. And to heal them, to listen to them, to help them. And then as we begin to do that, then the rejoicing is not just the 99 people who are well, but that the one person who was lost is now home again and is now safe. This is the work to which we are called. So may we be after it. May our eyes be opened. May we not just accept and celebrate the gift of Christ without hearing the call that we too need to take up our crosses daily and to follow. So we're going to get back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Magnificat, about the Annunciation, about Mary finding out that she is going to be the mother of Christ, of the Messiah, and even her song and her prayer and what that looks like and how powerful that voice is. We get to hear from Mary before we ever get to hear from Jesus as well. So it's a joy to be with you, and thank you for taking the time. And if you have any questions, by all means, please ask them. Please leave a comment. May God be with you today.